Rita's legs buckled as she stumbled toward what she thought was the medical transport helicopter. 16 hours of exhaustion blurred her vision. She had to reach Children's Memorial Hospital, where Lily had been transferred after her severe asthma attack. But the hands that steadied her weren't wearing scrubs. The voice asking, "Are you hurt?" didn't belong to any paramedic. Rita had stumbled into the wrong helicopter, and the billionaire staring at her with steel-gray eyes was looking at her like she held his answer. A letter beneath Rita's trembling hands felt impossibly soft compared to the vinyl seats she was used to in hospital transport vehicles. Her mahogany skin seemed to glow against the cream-colored interior as confusion clouded her dark eyes. This wasn't the emergency medical helicopter that was supposed to take her to Children's Memorial Hospital, where her 15-year-old daughter Lily lay alone and frightened after being transferred following a severe asthma attack at school. Eugene Fox, CEO of Fox Medical Technologies, had been preparing to depart from the St. Mary's Medical Complex helipad after an emergency board meeting when this exhausted woman in wrinkled scrubs had collapsed into his private aircraft. Her immediate concern wasn't his obvious wealth or commanding presence. She was frantic about reaching her daughter, who was alone and scared in a hospital across the city. "Please," Rita whispered, her voice hoarse from 16 straight hours of caring for patients in the ICU. "I need to get to Children's Memorial. My daughter, she can't breathe properly, and she's all alone." Her hands clutched the worn fabric of her scrubs, still carrying the faint scent of hospital antiseptic that no amount of washing could completely eliminate. Eugene studied this unexpected passenger with growing fascination. Most people who encountered him led with his wealth, his power, his connections. This woman saw none of that. She saw only an obstacle between herself and her child. "Children's Memorial Hospital," he said quietly to his pilot, never taking his penetrating gaze off Rita's face. "Emergency priority." Rita's head sapped up, hope and confusion warring in her expression. You're really taking me there? But this isn't the medical transport, and I can't pay for." "Your daughter needs you," Eugene interrupted, his voice carrying unexpected gentleness. "Nothing else matters right now." As the helicopter lifted off, Rita pressed her palm against the window, watching St. Mary's Medical Complex shrink below them. She had never been in any aircraft before, let alone one this luxurious, but her mind remained focused entirely on Lily. Her beautiful daughter, who had inherited her father's respiratory issues, along with Rita's stubborn determination. Have you ever found yourself in the wrong place at exactly the right time when a stranger's kindness changed everything? Tell me your story in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if this unexpected connection is already pulling at your heartstrings. Eugene found himself studying Rita's profile as she gazed anxiously out the window. There was something magnetic about her complete lack of awareness of his status. In his world of calculated interactions and ulterior motives, her genuine maternal fear was refreshingly honest. Her dark hair had escaped its practical ponytail during her exhausting shift, creating a soft frame around her face that highlighted the elegant curve of her jawline. "What happened to your daughter?" he asked, genuinely curious rather than making polite conversation. Rita's fingers pressed against the glass as if she could somehow make the helicopter fly faster. "Lily has exercise-induced asthma, usually manageable, but today during gym class, something triggered a severe attack. The school nurse couldn't get it under control." Her voice cracked slightly. "She was so spared when they loaded her into the ambulance. I promised I'd be right behind her, but my supervisor wouldn't let me leave until the next shift arrived. 16 hours later, and I'm just now getting to her." Eugene felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. His company manufactured respiratory equipment, devices that could mean the difference between life and death for children like Lily. Yet here he was, living in luxury, while this dedicated healthcare worker struggled to reach her frightened daughter. "You work at St. Mary's?" he asked, though her scrubs already answered the question. "ICU nurse assistant," Rita replied, still focused on the view below. "I'm finishing my RN degree through night classes, when I can manage it. Lily comes first, always, but we need the income and the degree will give us better opportunities. The helicopter hit a patch of turbulence, and Rita gripped the armrest as the aircraft lurched. Eugene immediately noticed her knuckles had gone white, her breathing becoming shallow, but then she seemed to notice something about him that medical training wouldn't let her ignore. "Your hands," she said suddenly, her attention snapping to his trembling fingers. "Are you okay?" Eugene followed her gaze to his own hands and realized she was right. The stress of the emergency board meeting, combined with the corporate scandal threatening his company, had his nervous system completely on edge. His hands were shaking, his breathing irregular, and he could feel the familiar pressure building behind his temples that signaled another sleepless night ahead. "I'm fine," he said automatically. The response every powerful man learned to give when showing vulnerability felt dangerous. Rita's medical instincts overrode social boundaries. Without asking permission, she reached across the space between their seats and gently pressed her fingers to his wrist, checking his pulse with professional efficiency. The moment her skin touched his, both of them felt something electric pass between them that had nothing to do with medical assessment. "Your heart rate is elevated," she said softly, but her voice had changed, becoming more intimate, despite the clinical observation. "Are you experiencing chest pain? Shortness of breath?" Eugene stared down at her fingers against his skin. When's the last time someone had touched him with genuine care, rather than calculated seduction? When had anyone looked at him with concern for his well-being, rather than his net worth? "I haven't been sleeping well," he admitted, surprising himself with the honesty. "There's been some complications at work." Rita's thumb traced across his pulse point in a gesture that was more comfort than medical necessity. "Chronic stress can cause serious health problems. When did you last see a doctor?" The tenderness in her voice made something in Eugene's chest loosen, as if her touch was physically releasing tension he'd been carrying for months. "I don't have time for doctors." "You have to make time," Rita said firmly, her dark eyes meeting his with an intensity that took his breath away. "Your body is trying to tell you something important." As she spoke, the helicopter began its descent toward Children's Memorial Hospital. Rita reluctantly withdrew her hand from his wrist, but the warmth of her touch seemed to linger on his skin. Eugene immediately missed the connection, the first genuine human contact he'd experienced in longer than he cared to remember. The aircraft touched down on the hospital's helipad, and Rita was already unfastening her seatbelt before they'd come to a complete stop. But as they stepped out onto the landing pad, aggressive reporters who had somehow tracked Eugene's unexpected destination swarmed them, cameras flashing and voices shouting questions about his presence at a children's hospital. "Mr. Fox, is Fox Medical Technologies making a major donation? Who's your companion, Mr. Fox? Are you here about the defective equipment scandal?" Rita froze, suddenly understanding exactly who had helped her. Eugene Fox. Rita had seen his face on business magazines and hospital waiting rooms, but had never paid attention to the headlines about massive corporate deals. Now, facing him in person, she realized the man who'd helped her was Eugene Fox, someone far more powerful than she'd understood. But before she could process this revelation fully, the aggressive crowd of reporters began pressing closer, their cameras and microphones creating a suffocating wall between her and the hospital entrance where Lily waited. Eugene's protective instinct activated before his rational mind could intervene. He stepped directly in front of Rita, his broad shoulders shielding her from the cameras, and wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her against his body as he pushed through the crowd. The gesture was purely protective, but the feeling of her curves pressed against his side, the way she seemed to melt into his strength, rather than pulling away, created an intimacy that shocked them both. "Keep your head down," he murmured against her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "I'll get you inside." Rita had been taking care of herself and Lily for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone protect her. The solid warmth of Eugene's body, the confident way he navigated the chaos, the gentle strength of his arm around her waist. It awakened something in her that had been dormant for years. For just a moment, she allowed herself to feel safe in his embrace. Once inside the hospital, away from the reporters, they should have separated. But neither of them stepped away immediately. Eugene's arm remained around Rita's waist, and she stayed pressed against his side, both of them breathing hard for more than just the rush through the crowd. "Thank you," Rita whispered, looking up into his eyes. "I don't know how to repay you for this." "You don't owe me anything," Eugene replied, his voice rougher than usual. "Where's your daughter?" The reminder of Lily snapped Rita back to reality. She stepped out of Eugene's embrace, immediately missing his warmth, and hurried toward the information desk to get Lily's room number. Eugene found himself following, unwilling to leave her side just yet. Lily was in the pediatric ICU, her dark skin appearing ashen against the white hospital sheets, oxygen cannula in her nose, and monitors tracking her vital signs. At 15, she was tall for her age, like her mother, with the same elegant bone structure and expressive dark eyes. But right now, those eyes were filled with fear and exhaustion. "Nana." Lo's voice was weak, but filled with relief as Rita rushed to her bedside. "I'm here, baby girl. I'm so sorry it took me so long." Rita took Lily's hand in both of hers, immediately assessing her daughter's condition with maternal and professional skill. "How are you feeling? Are you breathing easier?" "A little," Lily admitted, then noticed the tall, distinguished man standing respectfully near the doorway. "Who's that?" Rita glanced back at Eugene, suddenly aware that he'd stayed with them through this family crisis. "This is Mr. Fox. He helped me get here when I was having trouble with transportation." Lily studied Eugene with the frank curiosity of teenagers. "You look familiar. Are you somebody famous?" Eugene stepped closer to the bed, his expression gentling as he looked at this brave young woman who was clearly the center of Rita's world. "I run a company that makes medical equipment. Some of the machines helping you breathe right now might be ours." "Cool," Lily said, then had to pause to catch her breath. "Mama always says technology can be magic when it helps people." "Your mother is a very wise woman," Eugene replied, glancing at Rita with newfound respect. "She also has excellent medical instincts. She noticed I wasn't feeling well during our helicopter ride and took care of me too." Lily's eyes sharpened with interest. "Helicopter? Mama, you flew in a helicopter?" Rita felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It was just transportation, baby. Nothing fancy." But Lily was looking between her mother and Eugene with the perceptive intelligence that often made Rita forget her daughter was still a teenager. "Mama never accepts help from strangers." "You must be pretty special, Mr. Fox." The attending physician, Dr. Martinez, arrived for evening rounds, interrupting the charged moment. After examining Lily and reviewing her progress, he spoke privately with Rita about the treatment plan and when Lily might be discharged. Eugene waited in the hallway, checking his phone for the first time since Rita had stumbled into his helicopter. 17 missed calls from his assistant, 12 from his mother, and 43 text messages marked urgent. The board meeting he'd left early had been about the crisis threatening Fox Medical Technologies, defective batch of ventilators that had caused respiratory failures in 3 patients. The scandal could destroy everything he'd built. But as he looked through the small window into Lily's room, watching Rita gently help her daughter with a breathing exercise, Eugene realized he didn't want to leave. For the first time in years, he felt needed for something more meaningful than his money or his connections. Rita emerged from Lily's room 20 minutes later, looking emotionally drained but relieved. "She's going to be fine. They want to keep her overnight for observation, but her oxygen levels are stable." "That's wonderful news," Eugene said, and meant it. "Will you be staying here with her?" "Of course. The chairs convert to beds for parents." Rita paused, studying his face. "You should go home and get some rest. You still look stressed, and whatever's happening at your company probably needs your attention." Eugene was quiet for a long moment. In his world, business crises always took priority over personal connections. But standing here in this hospital hallway, looking at this woman who had touched his life in ways he was only beginning to understand, The corporate emergency felt less urgent than ensuring Rita and Lily were truly okay. "What if I don't want to leave?" he asked quietly. Rita's breath caught at the intensity in his voice. "Mr. Fox?" "Eugene," he corrected. "After everything we've shared today, I think we're past formal titles." "Eugene," she repeated softly, testing the intimacy of his name. "You have important responsibilities. I'm just a nurse assistant with a sick daughter. Our worlds don't." "Don't what?" Eugene stepped closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. "Don't connect? Because I felt something when you touched my wrist in that helicopter, something I haven't felt in a very long time." Rita's eyes widened. She had felt it too. That electric awareness, a sense of recognition that went beyond physical attraction. But she was also practical, experienced with disappointment, and protective of both herself and Lily. "You saved my daughter's life today by getting me here quickly," she said carefully. "I'll always be grateful for that. But gratitude isn't the same as what I'm feeling right now," Eugene finished. "Rita, I know we just met. I know our circumstances are complicated. But I also know that when you put your hand on my wrist and looked at me with genuine concern, something shifted inside me that I can't ignore." Before Rita could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Parker at St. Mary's. "Emergency in ICU. Need you back ASAP. Transport arranged." Rita's face fell as she read the message. "I have to go back to work. There's an emergency and they're short-staffed." "But what about Lily?" "She'll be fine here until morning. The nursing staff is excellent, and she needs the rest." Rita's voice was resigned. "I can't afford to refuse emergency shifts." Eugene watched the exhaustion settle back over Rita's features. The brief respite of knowing Lily was safe, already being replaced by the stress of her demanding life. Something protective and possessive stirred in his chest. "Let me drive you back to St. Mary's," he offered. Rita shook her head. "That's not necessary. The hospital arranged transportation." "Rita," Eugene said, his voice carrying an urgency that surprised them both. "I don't want this to end here. Today changed something for me, and I think it changed something for you too." She looked up into his eyes and saw vulnerability there that she suspected few people ever witnessed. This powerful billionaire was asking her not to disappear from his life. And despite every rational thought telling her that their worlds were incompatible, her heart was whispering that maybe, just maybe, some connections transcended circumstances. "I have to check on Lily one more time," she said softly. "Then, we can talk on the way back to St. Mary's." Eugene nodded, hope flickering in his chest, as Rita returned to her daughter's room. Through the window, he watched her smooth Lily's hair and whisper reassurances, her love for her daughter evident in every gentle gesture. The sight stirred something deep in Eugene's chest. Not just attraction to Rita's beauty, but admiration for her strength, her devotion, her capacity to care for others even when she was exhausted. When Rita rejoined him in the hallway, her eyes held a mixture of uncertainty and possibility that matched his own feelings exactly. "Ready?" Eugene asked, offering his arm. Rita hesitated for just a moment, then slipped her hand through his elbow. "Ready." As they walked toward the hospital exit together, neither could have predicted that this chance encounter would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, class, and the courage required to follow your heart when the whole world seems determined to keep you apart. But in that moment, walking side by side through the quiet hospital corridor, both Rita and Eugene felt something they hadn't experienced in years. The thrilling uncertainty of a new beginning and the dangerous hope that sometimes the wrong helicopter turns out to be exactly where you're supposed to be. Days passed, with Rita unable to forget Eugene's gentle strength during their helicopter ride. Every time she closed her eyes, she could feel the warmth of his protective embrace as he shielded her from the aggressive reporters. The way his voice had softened when he spoke to Lily. The vulnerability in his eyes when she'd checked his pulse. These memories invaded her thoughts during double shifts, making her pulse quicken at the most inconvenient moments. Eugene found himself researching St. Mary's Hospital with an intensity that surprised him. He learned about their chronic understaffing crisis, their reputation for serving the city's most vulnerable populations, and Rita's stellar reputation among both colleagues and patients. When he discovered she was pursuing her RN degree through night classes while working exhausting shifts to support herself and Lily, his admiration deepened into something more complex and consuming. The corporate crisis at Fox Medical Technologies demanded his full attention. The defective ventilator scandal threatened to destroy everything he'd built, requiring 18-hour days of damage control, legal meetings, and strategic planning. But even in the middle of crucial board presentations, Eugene's mind would drift to Rita's gentle touch on his wrist, the way she'd looked at him with genuine concern rather than calculation. Rita returned to her demanding routine at St. Mary's, but everything felt different now. Her colleagues noticed she seemed distracted, catching her staring out windows toward the helipad where she'd first encountered Eugene. During her breaks, she found herself Googling Fox Medical Technologies, reading business articles about Eugene's innovations in respiratory equipment, trying to reconcile the powerful CEO in those photographs with the vulnerable man who'd helped her reach her daughter. Lily recovered fully from her asthma attack, returning to school with new appreciation for her mother's strength and a teenager's curiosity about the mysterious billionaire who'd rescued them both. She peppered Rita with questions about Eugene Fox that her mother deflected with increasing difficulty. "Mama, you've been different since the hospital," Lily observed one evening as they shared their modest dinner. "You keep checking your phone like you're expecting something." Rita nearly choked on her rice and beans. "I'm not expecting anything, baby girl, just focused on work and your health." "Uh-huh," Lily said with teenage skepticism. "And does this focus have anything to do with a certain handsome billionaire who flew you to the hospital in his private helicopter?" "Lily Marie," Rita warned, but her daughter's knowing smile made heat rise in her cheeks. "I looked him up online, Mama. Eugene Fox is like seriously rich and seriously fine. And the way he looked at you in the hospital." Lily grinned. "That man was smitten." Rita stood abruptly, clearing their plates with unnecessary force. "That man lives in a completely different world than ours. Sometimes people are kind in crisis situations, but that doesn't mean anything beyond the moment." But even as she said the words, Rita's heart rejected them. What she'd felt with Eugene went beyond kindness or gratitude. The electric awareness when their skin touched, the way he'd made her feel protected and cherished, the vulnerability he'd shown her. None of that felt temporary or circumstantial. Eugene was having similar internal battles in his penthouse office, staring out at the city lights while reviewing legal documents about the ventilator recall. His mother, Mrs. Teresa Fox, had been calling repeatedly, demanding updates on the company crisis and his personal life. His former fiancée, Susan Wheeler, had been circling like a predator, offering to merge their companies to weather the scandal, an offer that came with obvious personal strings attached. But all Eugene could think about was Rita's voice saying his name, the way she'd instinctively cared for his stress symptoms, the fierce love in her eyes when she looked at her daughter. He'd dated socialites, models, and businesswomen who saw him as a prize to be won. Rita had seen him as a human being who needed healing. 1 week after their helicopter encounter, Eugene made a decision that his rational mind warned against, but his heart demanded. He would visit St. Mary's Hospital under the pretense of a corporate donation meeting to discuss their equipment needs. It was a legitimate business reason that would allow him to see Rita again without appearing to pursue her inappropriately. Rita was restocking supplies in the ICU when word spread through the hospital that Eugene Fox was in the building for a high-level meeting with administration. Her hands trembled as she arranged medication packages, her heart racing with the possibility that she might see him again. She told herself she was being foolish. He was here on business, not to see her. But when Eugene finished his donation meeting and specifically requested a tour of the ICU to assess equipment needs, Rita found herself assigned as his guide due to her knowledge of the respiratory devices Fox Medical Technologies manufactured. "Miss Wilson," Eugene said formally when they were introduced in front of Hospital Administrator Johnson and ICU Director Stevens. "I understand you have experience with our respiratory equipment." "Yes, sir," Rita replied, matching his professional tone despite the way her pulse jumped when his eyes met hers. I work frequently with your ventilators and monitoring systems. As they moved through the ICU, Rita demonstrated various equipment while Eugene asked thoughtful questions about functionality and user experience. To outside observers, it was a standard corporate assessment. But the tension crackling between them was palpable. Stolen glances when no one was looking, the careful way they avoided accidental contact, the slight tremor in Rita's voice when she explained technical specifications. The tour concluded at a supply closet, where Rita needed to retrieve additional equipment manuals. Eugene followed her into the small space, ostensibly to examine inventory organization. But when the door closed behind them, the pretense crumbled. The confined space made every breath they shared feel intimate. Eugene's cologne mixed with the antiseptic scent Rita carried, creating something uniquely theirs. When his hand accidentally brushed hers, reaching for the same file, the simple contact sent electricity up Rita's arm that had nothing to do with the cramped quarters. "Rita, turn around, please." She slowly faced him, her back against the supply shelves, and found him standing close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the stress lines that hadn't been there a week ago. "This is why you're really here," Rita said quietly, not turning around as she reached for files on the upper shelf. "Yes," Eugene admitted, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. "I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." Rita's hand stilled on the shelf. "Eugene, we can't do this. Not here, not like this. You're a major hospital donor, I'm just an employee. The power dynamic alone makes this inappropriate." Eugene stepped closer, drawn by her honesty and the way she said his name. Turn around, please." She slowly faced him in the cramped space, her back against the supply shelves, and found him standing close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the stress lines that hadn't been there a week ago. "You look terrible," she said with medical directness, her caregiver instincts overriding social barriers. "Are you sleeping at all?" "Maybe 3 hours a night," Eugene admitted. "The company crisis is complicated." Without thinking, Rita reached up and touched his forehead, checking for fever. "You can't function like this. Your body will shut down." The gentle pressure of her palm against his skin sent electricity through Eugene's entire nervous system. "Rita," he whispered, his voice carrying warning and desire in equal measure. "I know," she breathed, but neither of them stepped away. "This is dangerous for both of us." Eugene's hand rose to cover hers against his forehead. "I can't seem to care about the danger when you touch me like this." Rita's eyes widened as she felt the heat of his skin, the way his breathing deepened under her touch. They were standing in a hospital supply closet, surrounded by medical equipment, but the intimacy between them felt more intense than any romantic setting could provide. "Someone could come in," Rita whispered, even as her thumb traced along his temple in a gesture more tender than medical. "I know," Eugene said, his other hand settling gently on her waist. "But I needed to see you. I needed to know if what happened between us was real or just crisis adrenaline." "And what's your conclusion?" Rita asked, her voice barely audible. Eugene's eyes searched her face, taking in the way her pupils dilated when he touched her, the slight parting of her lips, the rapid flutter of her pulse at her throat. "This is very real. And very complicated." Before either could analyze the situation further, voices in the hallway grew closer. Rita and Eugene sprang apart just as someone knocked on the supply closet door. "Miss Wilson, the administrators are looking for you," called Nurse Peterson. "Coming," Rita replied, her voice higher than usual. She grabbed random files from the shelf, avoiding Eugene's intense gaze. "The tour is complete, Mr. Fox. I hope you found what you were looking for." Eugene watched her bustle past him toward the door, noting the flush in her cheeks and the way her hands trembled slightly. "I found exactly what I was looking for," he said quietly, his words carrying layers of meaning. Rita paused with her hand on the door handle, looking back at him over her shoulder. "This can't happen again. It's too risky for both of us." "Rita," Eugene said as she opened the door, "some risks are worth taking." She fled the supply closet without responding, leaving Eugene alone with the lingering scent of her perfume and the ache of interrupted possibility. The rest of Eugene's hospital visit passed in professional formality, but Rita felt his awareness of her like a physical presence. Every time their paths crossed during his tour, the air seemed to charge with electricity. When he finally left the hospital, Rita told herself she was relieved. But the empty feeling in her chest suggested otherwise. That evening, Rita worked late again, covering for a colleague who called in sick. At nearly midnight, she found herself in the hospital parking garage. Exhausted and emotionally drained from the intensity of seeing Eugene again. The underground garage was poorly lit and largely empty at this hour, creating shadows that made her hurry toward the bus stop. She was almost to the exit when she heard footsteps echoing in the concrete space. Rita turned, expecting to see another late-shift worker, but instead found Eugene Fox emerging from behind a pillar where he'd apparently been waiting. "Eugene?" Rita's voice echoed in the empty garage. "What are you doing here?" "I couldn't leave," he admitted, walking slowly toward her. "I've been sitting in my car for 2 hours, trying to convince myself to drive away." Rita looked around the deserted garage, suddenly aware they were completely alone. "You can't keep showing up at my workplace. People will talk, and I can't afford to have my professionalism questioned." "I know," Eugene said, stopping just close enough that she could see the conflicted emotions playing across his features. "But I also know that what happened in that supply closet wasn't just physical attraction. There's something between us that I'd never experienced before." Rita's heart hammered against her ribs. "Eugene, I meant what I said. This is too complicated. Your world and mine." "Forget our worlds for a minute," Eugene interrupted. "Just tell me honestly, do you feel what I feel when we're near each other?" Rita closed her eyes, fighting against a truth that wanted to spill from her lips. When she opened them again, Eugene had moved closer, near enough that she could see the exhaustion and longing in his eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "I feel it too. But feeling something doesn't mean we should act on it." "Why not?" Eugene asked, his voice rough with barely controlled emotion. "Because I'm wealthy and you're not? Because people will judge us? Or because you're afraid of getting hurt?" The question hit too close to home. Rita had been hurt before, by Lily's father, who disappeared when faced with the responsibility of pregnancy and immigration complications, by other men who'd made promises they never intended to keep. She'd learned to protect herself and her daughter by keeping emotional distance from anyone who could disrupt their carefully built stability. All of the above, Rita admitted with painful honesty. "I can't afford to make mistakes, Eugene. I have Lily to think about, my career to protect, my immigration status to maintain. Getting involved with you feels like risking everything I've worked for." Emotion flooded through Eugene at her vulnerability. "Rita, I would never do anything to jeopardize your status or your career. I'm not asking you to risk everything. I'm asking you to take one evening to explore what's happening between us." "One evening," Rita repeated, her voice skeptical. "Dinner, somewhere private, where we can talk without worrying about hospital politics or social expectations. Just two people getting to know each other." Eugene paused, then added quietly, "I haven't been able to concentrate on anything since I met you. The company crisis, family pressures, everything else feels secondary to this need to understand what you've awakened in me." Rita stared at him in the shadowy garage, this powerful man admitting that she'd disrupted his entire world. The honest vulnerability in his voice made her defenses waver. "If I say yes," she said carefully, "it doesn't mean anything beyond conversation. I'm not making any promises about where this leads." "I'm not asking for promises," Eugene replied. "Just a chance." Rita was quiet for a long moment, her practical mind warring with the longing in her heart. Finally, she pulled out her phone and checked her schedule. "I have Sunday evening free. Lily will be at her friend Maria's house working on a school project." "Sunday evening," Eugene confirmed, hope flickering in his voice. "I'll pick you up." "No," Rita said quickly. "I'll meet you somewhere, and somewhere discreet. I can't afford to be seen as your—" "As my what?" Eugene asked when she trailed off. "As your whatever this is," Rita finished awkwardly. "I don't know what to call it." Eugene stepped closer, drawn by her uncertainty and the way she was trying to protect herself while still agreeing to see him. "Rita, I don't know what to call it either, but I know I need to find out." She nodded, then gave him the address of a small Caribbean restaurant in her neighborhood. "Sunday, 7 o'clock. And Eugene?" "Yes. This stays between us. No matter what happens or doesn't happen, I need your word that my privacy will be protected. You have my word, Eugene said solemnly. Your trust means more to me than you know. Rita turned to leave, then looked back over her shoulder. And Eugene, get some sleep. You look like you're about to collapse, and that's my professional medical opinion. Eugene watched her walk away, noting the graceful way she moved despite her exhaustion, the protective dignity she carried even in this vulnerable moment. He stood alone in the parking garage long after she'd disappeared, already counting the hours until Sunday evening. Neither Rita nor Eugene realized that someone had been watching their encounter from the shadows. Susan Wheeler lowered her phone, having captured several photos of their intimate conversation in the deserted garage. Her perfectly manicured fingers flew across the screen as she forwarded the images to a private investigator, along with a message. I need everything you can find on Rita Wilson. Employment history, immigration status, family background, financial records, everything. Susan's perfectly crafted smile held no warmth as she composed a text to Eugene. Darling, I heard about your hospital visit today. How noble of you to personally assess their needs. I hope you're not getting too personally involved with the charity work. See you at Mother's Dinner Friday. As Eugene drove home through the city streets, his mind already planning Sunday evening, he had no idea that the woman he'd once considered marrying was already plotting to destroy the woman who'd captured his heart. But in a few days, he would learn that some people will go to any length to keep others from finding happiness, and that protecting the woman you love sometimes requires more courage than building an empire. Sunday evening arrived with Rita changing clothes 3 times before settling on a simple navy dress that hugged her curves without being inappropriate for their neighborhood restaurant. She told herself this was just dinner, just conversation, but her racing pulse suggested her heart had other ideas. Eugene arrived at Irie Kitchen 15 minutes early, having spent the entire day in a state of nervous anticipation he hadn't experienced since adolescence. The small Caribbean restaurant was exactly the kind of place he never would have discovered on his own. Warm, authentic, and welcoming rather than pretentious. Steel drum music played softly in the background, and the air was rich with the scents of jerk seasoning and coconut curry. When Rita walked through the door at exactly 7 o'clock, Eugene felt his breath catch. Away from the hospital environment, dressed in something other than scrubs, she was absolutely radiant. The dark green dress emphasized her skin, and the elegant curves she usually kept hidden under loose medical uniforms. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and she moved with natural grace that spoke of Caribbean heritage and quiet confidence. You look beautiful, Eugene said as he stood to greet her, his voice carrying genuine admiration rather than practiced flattery. Rita felt heat rise in her cheeks at the sincerity in his tone. Thank you. You look rested. Did you actually sleep? 6 hours last night, Eugene admitted as they settled into a corner booth that offered privacy. Your medical advice about my stress levels made an impression. The restaurant owner, Miss Carmen, personally brought them menus and welcomed Rita like family. Rita, darling, you brought someone special tonight? Just a friend, Miss Carmen, Rita replied, but the older woman's knowing smile suggested she wasn't fooled by the careful distance Rita was trying to maintain. As they ordered, Eugene following Rita's recommendations for curry goat and festival bread, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Away from the hospital setting and corporate formality, they discovered shared interests in literature, concerns about healthcare accessibility, and a mutual appreciation for authentic cultural experiences over trendy social scenes. Tell me about your family, Eugene asked as they shared appetizers. How did you end up in this city? Rita's expression grew thoughtful. I came here from Barbados when I was 22, pregnant with Lily and essentially alone. Her father, he wasn't ready for the responsibility, especially the complications of immigration paperwork and supporting a family. I had nursing training from back home, but had to start over here with certifications and proving my qualifications. Eugene watched the play of emotions across her face. Old pain, fierce determination, and quiet pride in what she'd accomplished. That must have been terrifying. Terrifying and liberating, Rita admitted. I realized I could either let fear paralyze me or let it fuel my determination to build something better for my daughter. Lily has never wanted for anything essential, even if we can't afford luxuries. She's remarkable, Eugene said warmly, intelligent, confident, clearly raised with love and strong values. You should be proud of what you've accomplished as a single mother. Rita felt tears prick her eyes at the genuine respect in his voice. Most men either saw her single motherhood as baggage or her daughter as an obstacle to overcome. Eugene spoke about Lily as if she were an asset, a wonderful part of Rita's life to be celebrated rather than tolerated. What about your family? Rita asked, deflecting attention from her emotional response. I've read about your father's legacy in medical technology, but what was he like as a person? Eugene's expression darkened slightly. Brilliant, driven, and completely consumed by his work. He built Fox Medical Technologies from nothing, revolutionizing respiratory equipment and saving countless lives. But he also worked himself to death, literally. Massive heart attack at 58, alone in his office at midnight. I'm sorry, Rita said softly, instinctively reaching across the table to touch his hand. That must have been devastating. It was, Eugene admitted, turning his palm up to capture her fingers. But it also terrified me, because I recognized myself in his patterns. The endless work, the sleepless nights, the way business always came first. Meeting you made me realize I was heading down the same path. Rita felt the warmth of his skin against hers, the way his thumb traced across her knuckles, and a gesture that was becoming familiar and dangerously addictive. Eugene, you can't change your entire life based on one encounter with a stranger. Can't I? Eugene asked, his eyes intense as they met hers. Rita, in the past week, you've made me question everything I thought I wanted. Success, corporate power, social status. None of it feels meaningful compared to the way I felt when you cared enough to check my pulse, when you trusted me enough to help you reach your daughter. Rita's heart hammered against her ribs at the raw honesty in his voice. We barely know each other. Then tell me more, Eugene said, his fingers tightening slightly around hers. Help me know you better. Over dinner, they shared stories, dreams, and vulnerabilities that neither had revealed to casual acquaintances. Rita talked about her dreams of opening a community health clinic, serving immigrant families. Eugene revealed his growing disillusionment with corporate culture and his desire to focus on medical innovations that serve humanity rather than profit margins. As the evening progressed, the careful distance Rita had tried to maintain began crumbling. Eugene's genuine interest in her thoughts, his respectful questions about her Caribbean heritage, his obvious admiration for her strength and intelligence, all of it conspired to make her feel seen and valued in ways she'd forgotten were possible. I should go, Rita said reluctantly as their dinner plates were cleared away. Lily will be home soon, and I have an early shift tomorrow. Let me drive you home, Eugene offered, signaling for the check. Eugene, I told you. Just to make sure you get there safely, Eugene interrupted gently. It's late. And this neighborhood isn't always safe after dark. Rita wanted to argue, to maintain her independence, but the protective concern in his voice made her feel cherished rather than patronized. Okay, but just to the corner near my building. As they walked to Eugene's car, a understated luxury sedan rather than the flashy sports car she'd expected, Rita found herself hyper-aware of his presence beside her. The way he placed his hand at the small of her back to guide her around a puddle, the subtle scent of his cologne mixing with the night air, the protective way he positioned himself between her and the street. The drive to Rita's neighborhood was quiet, filled with unspoken tension and the weight of decisions neither wanted to make hastily. When Eugene pulled up to the corner she'd indicated, Rita made no immediate move to get out of the car. Thank you for dinner, she said softly. And for seeing me as more than just my circumstances. Rita, Eugene turned in his seat to face her fully, his expression serious. I need you to know that tonight wasn't charity or curiosity about how the other half lives. What I feel for you has nothing to do with your economic status and everything to do with who you are as a person. Rita studied his face in the dim streetlight, searching for any sign of the practiced charm wealthy men often used with women they considered temporary diversions. Instead, she saw only sincerity and a vulnerability that matched her own. "I believe you," she whispered. "But belief doesn't make this less complicated." Eugene reached across the space between their seats, gently cupping her face in his palm. "Rita, I know this is complicated. I know we come from different worlds, face different challenges. But I also know that I haven't felt this alive in years, and it's because of you." Rita leaned into his touch, despite every warning voice in her head. "Eugene, I'm scared." "Of me?" he asked, his thumb tracing across her cheekbone. "Of this," Rita clarified, her voice barely audible. "Of how much I want something I don't think I can have." Eugene's eyes searched her face, taking in the conflict written in her expression. "What if you could have it? What if we could find a way to make this work despite the complications?" Before Rita could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Project finished early. Maria's mom is dropping me home in 20 minutes. Love you, Mama." Reality crashed back over Rita like cold water. She had a daughter to think about, responsibilities that couldn't be ignored for romantic fantasies, no matter how compelling. "I have to go," Rita said, pulling reluctantly away from Eugene's touch. "Lily will be home soon." Eugene nodded, but neither of them moved. The air in the car seemed charged with electricity, with all the words they weren't saying and the desires they weren't acknowledging. "Rita," Eugene said as she reached for the door handle, "this doesn't have to end here." She paused, looking back at him over her shoulder. "Doesn't it? You'll go back to your penthouse and your board meetings and your complicated business crisis. I'll go back to double shifts and night classes and raising my daughter. When will we see each other again? How does this possibly work in the real world?" Eugene felt something desperate rise in his chest at the resignation in her voice. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I can't let you walk away without trying to find out." Rita's resolve wavered at the raw need in his voice. "Eugene, one more evening," he said quietly. "Give me one more chance to show you that this is worth the complications." Rita closed her eyes, torn between the practical voice telling her to protect herself and the longing in her heart that had been awakened by this remarkable man. When she opened her eyes again, Eugene was looking at her with such tender hope that her carefully constructed walls began to crumble. "If I say yes," she said carefully, "where would we go? We can't keep meeting in public places, and your world isn't exactly discreet." Eugene was quiet for a moment, considering. "My penthouse has a private entrance, no doorman, no publicity, complete privacy. We could talk about whether this is something worth pursuing or something we should end before it gets more complicated." Rita felt her pulse quicken at the suggestion. Being alone with Eugene in his private space felt both terrifying and intensely appealing. "Just to talk," she said, as much to herself as to him. "Just to talk," Eugene confirmed, though his eyes held promises that went far beyond conversation. Rita looked out at her modest neighborhood, then back at this man who disrupted her carefully ordered life with his unexpected kindness and devastating appeal. Friday evening, after Lily's at her friend's sleepover. "Friday evening," Eugene repeated, hope flickering to life in his voice. Rita got out of the car before she could change her mind, but she paused on the sidewalk to look back at him through the passenger window. "Eugene, what we talked about tonight, about your father and my dreams, that stays between us. Always," Eugene promised solemnly. Rita nodded and walked quickly toward her building, not trusting herself to look back again. But she could feel Eugene's eyes on her until she disappeared through the front door. Eugene sat in his car for several minutes after Rita vanished from sight, his mind racing with possibilities and his body still humming from the brief touch of her skin. Friday felt like an eternity away, but it also felt like a deadline approaching too quickly. As he finally drove away from Rita's neighborhood, Eugene had no idea that Susan Wheeler's private investigator had been photographing their entire evening from a rented room across from the restaurant. By morning, Susan would have detailed reports about Rita's immigration history, her financial struggles, and most damaging of all, evidence that she'd once been arrested during a protest supporting healthcare workers' rights. Susan smiled coldly as she reviewed the photos on her laptop screen. Eugene looking at Rita with obvious adoration, their intimate conversation over dinner, the tender way he'd touched her face in the car. All the ammunition she needed to destroy this inconvenient romance and reclaim the man she considered her property. But she would wait until Friday night to make her move. Let them have their little romantic evening. It would make Eugene's devastation so much more complete when he learned the truth about his precious Rita's criminal past and her obvious gold-digging motives. What Susan didn't realize was that she was about to underestimate the depth of Eugene's feelings for Rita and the lengths he would go to protect the woman who'd captured not just his desire, but his heart. Friday evening arrived with Rita's nerves stretched to their breaking point. She'd spent the entire week second-guessing her decision to meet Eugene at his penthouse, alternating between anticipation and terror about what the evening might bring. Her hands trembled as she applied lipstick, changed her dress twice, and checked on Lily one final time before her daughter left for her sleepover at Maria's house. "Mama, you're acting weird," Lily observed as Rita fussed with her appearance in the hallway mirror. "Are you going somewhere special?" "Just meeting a friend for coffee," Rita replied, hoping her voice sounded casual despite the way her heart was hammering against her ribs. Lily studied her mother's carefully applied makeup and the burgundy dress that accentuated her curves. "Must be some coffee date. You look beautiful, Mama." After Lily left with Maria's mother, Rita sat alone in her small apartment, staring at the address Eugene had texted her. His penthouse occupied the top floor of one of the city's most exclusive buildings, accessed through a private garage entrance that would ensure complete discretion. She could still change her mind, send a text declining, and return to the safety of her predictable life. But as she remembered the vulnerability in Eugene's eyes when he'd asked for one more chance, Rita knew she couldn't walk away without exploring what was developing between them. She grabbed her purse, whispered a prayer for wisdom, and headed toward what felt like the most dangerous and necessary evening of her life. Eugene paced his penthouse living room like a caged animal, adjusting lighting, selecting music, and second-guessing every detail of the evening he'd planned. The space reflected his personality, sophisticated but warm, expensive but not ostentatious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the city lights. He'd ordered dinner from Rita's favorite Caribbean restaurant, chosen wine that complemented the spiced flavors, and tried to create an atmosphere that felt welcoming rather than seductive. But despite his careful preparations, Eugene couldn't ignore the electric anticipation coursing through his system. The corporate crisis that had consumed his days for weeks felt secondary to the approaching evening with Rita. His insomnia had returned with a vengeance, not from stress but from the memory of her touch, the sound of her voice saying his name, the way she'd looked at him with such conflicted longing. When Rita arrived at the private garage entrance, Eugene met her personally rather than sending his driver. She emerged from her Uber wearing the burgundy dress that made her skin appear luminous, her hair styled in loose waves that caught the underground lighting. The sight of her took Eugene's breath away, but it was the nervous uncertainty in her dark eyes that made his chest tighten with protective tenderness. "You came," Eugene said softly, as if he'd been afraid she might change her mind. "I almost didn't," Rita admitted with characteristic honesty. "I must have rewritten my decline text 20 times. Eugene stepped closer, drawn by her vulnerability. "What made you decide to come?" Rita met his eyes, seeing the same mixture of hope and uncertainty that she felt. "Curiosity. And the fact that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you for 2 weeks." The private elevator ride to his penthouse was charged with unspoken tension. They stood close enough that Rita could smell Eugene's subtle cologne, feel the warmth radiating from his body, but neither touched. The air between them seemed to vibrate with anticipation and possibility. Eugene's penthouse exceeded Rita's expectations in its understated elegance. The space was clearly expensive, but felt lived in and comfortable rather than sterile. Books lined built-in shelves, family photos mixed with tasteful art. "I designed it to be a refuge," Eugene explained, moving closer. "Somewhere I could escape from the corporate world and just be myself." Rita noticed the stress lines around his eyes had deepened since their dinner date. "The business crisis is getting worse, isn't it?" Eugene nodded, surprised by her perceptiveness. The defective ventilator scandal is threatening everything. Legal battles, potential criminal charges, company stock dropping daily. I should be consumed with damage control, but all I can think about is you." The raw honesty in his voice made Rita's defenses waver. "Eugene, I don't want to be a distraction from something so important." "You're not a distraction," Eugene said, closing the distance between them until he stood close enough to touch her face. "You're the only thing keeping me sane. When I'm with you, I remember why I got into medical technology in the first place, to help people, not just build wealth." Rita felt her heart race as his thumb traced along her jawline. "That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you barely know." "Do we barely know each other?" Eugene asked softly. "Because it feels like I've been waiting my whole life to meet someone who sees me the way you do." Before Rita could respond, Eugene's phone buzzed with an urgent text. He ignored it, but the device continued buzzing insistently. Rita stepped back, giving him space to check the messages. "Go ahead," she said. "It might be important." Eugene glanced at his phone and his expression darkened. "My mother. She's persistent when she wants something." "Take it," Rita insisted. "I'll look at your book collection." Eugene answered the call reluctantly. "Mother, this isn't a good time." Mrs. Teresa Fox's voice was loud enough that Rita could hear fragments of the conversation as she browsed Eugene's impressive library. Words like reputation, inappropriate, and social standing carried clearly across the room. Rita's stomach dropped as she realized the call was about her, about their relationship. "Mother, I'm 35 years old," Eugene said firmly. "My personal life is not subject to board approval." More sharp words from Mrs. Fox, followed by Eugene's increasingly tense responses. Rita tried to focus on the book titles, but the conversation was impossible to ignore. "No, I will not be attending Susan's charity gala," Eugene said with finality. "And no, I have no intention of reconsidering our broken engagement." Rita's hands stilled on a volume of poetry as the pieces clicked together. Susan Wheeler wasn't just a business rival, she was Eugene's ex-fiancé. The same Susan who'd been orchestrating attacks on Rita's reputation at the hospital through subtle gossip and veiled questions about her motivations for befriending wealthy patients. Eugene ended the call abruptly and turned to find Rita watching him with a mixture of understanding and concern. "Your mother knows about us," Rita said quietly. "She knows I've been distracted, and Susan has been feeding her information designed to cause problems." Eugene ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." Rita moved away from the bookshelf, her expression thoughtful. "Eugene, Susan Wheeler was your fiancé. When?" 2 years ago. We ended things because I realized I was more committed to the idea of marrying her than actually wanting to spend my life with her." Eugene watched Rita's face carefully. "Why do you ask?" "She's been asking questions about me at the hospital. Subtle inquiries about my background, my immigration status, my relationship with patients. I thought she was just curious. But now you realize she sees you as a threat." Eugene finished grimly. "Rita, Susan can be vindictive when she doesn't get what she wants. If she's investigating you, then I should probably leave." Rita interrupted, moving toward her purse. "Before this gets more complicated for both of us." Eugene caught her hand before she could retreat. "Rita, don't let Susan's manipulation drive you away. Don't let fear of what other people might think steal this chance for us." Rita looked down at their joined hands, feeling the familiar electric awareness that sparked whenever they touched. "Eugene, your mother was right about one thing. Our worlds are very different. I can't afford to have my professional reputation questioned, and I can't expose Lily to potential backlash from your social circle." "What if those weren't concerns?" Eugene asked, stepping closer. "What if it was just you and me, without the complications and social pressures? What would you want then?" Rita's eyes met his, seeing the vulnerability and hope in his steel-gray gaze. "That's not how the real world works." "Maybe not," Eugene admitted, his free hand rising to cup her face. "But we're not in the real world right now. We're here, alone, with no one else's opinions or judgments, just us." Rita felt herself leaning into his touch, despite every warning voice in her head. "Eugene, just us," he repeated softly, his thumb tracing across her lower lip. "Tell me what you want, Rita, not what's practical or safe or sensible. What do you want?" Rita's breath caught as she felt the warmth of his skin against hers, saw the desire and tenderness in his eyes. For once in her adult life, She wanted to choose what her heart craved, rather than what her mind deemed prudent. "I want," she whispered, then stopped, afraid to voice the longing that had been growing stronger each day since their first meeting. "Tell me," Eugene urged gently. "I want to feel like I did in that helicopter," Rita admitted, her voice barely audible. "When you looked at me like I was exactly what you needed. When you made me feel protected and cherished and wanted for who I am, not what I can provide." Eugene's eyes darkened with emotion at her honest confession. "Rita, you are exactly what I need. And I want you more than I've ever wanted anything in my life." Before Rita could analyze the wisdom of her next action, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that was soft, tentative, and filled with weeks of suppressed longing. Eugene responded immediately, his arms wrapping around her waist to pull her closer as the kiss deepened into something hungry and desperate. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, their foreheads touching as they held each other in the dim lighting of his living room. "Rita," Eugene whispered against her lips, "are you sure about this?" Instead of answering with words, Rita kissed him again, pouring all her conflicted emotions into the connection between them. Eugene lifted her easily, carrying her toward his bedroom as she wrapped her legs around his waist, their mouths never separating. Eugene's bedroom was as elegantly understated as the rest of his penthouse, but Rita noticed none of the details. Her attention was consumed entirely by the man laying her gently on his bed, by the reverent way he touched her face, by the love and desire burning in his eyes. "Are you certain?" Eugene asked one more time, his hands framing her face as he looked into her eyes. "Because once we cross this line, there's no going back for me. You'll have my heart completely." Rita felt tears prick her eyes at the raw vulnerability in his voice. "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but I'm also more certain about this than I've been about anything in years." Rita's hands trembled as she reached for him, years of careful self-protection crumbling under the intensity of what she felt for this man who'd become her sanctuary. Eugene's touch was reverent, patient, as if he understood that for Rita, physical intimacy meant complete emotional surrender. "Are you certain?" Eugene asked one more time, his hands framing her face as he looked into her eyes. "Because once we cross this line, there's no going back for me. You'll have my heart completely." Their lovemaking was tender and passionate, a perfect blend of desperate need and reverent care. Eugene worshipped Rita's body with his hands and mouth, showing her a gentleness and patience she'd never experienced. Rita responded with equal passion, her touch healing wounds in Eugene's soul that he'd carried for years. Afterwards, they lay entwined in the soft lighting, Rita's head on Eugene's chest as his fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. The intimacy between them felt both new and ancient, as if they'd been meant to find each other across all the obstacles that had tried to keep them apart. Eugene knew it was too soon for the words burning in his chest. But watching Rita care for others with such dedication, seeing her strength in crisis, he couldn't deny what he felt was deeper than attraction or infatuation. "I love you," Eugene whispered into the darkness, the words escaping before he could censor them. Rita's breath caught at the unexpected declaration. She lifted her head to look at him, seeing truth and vulnerability in his expression. "Eugene, I know it's too soon," he said quickly. "I know we haven't known each other long enough, but Rita, what I feel for you goes beyond physical attraction or infatuation. You've changed something fundamental in me." Rita felt her heart swell with emotions she'd been trying to suppress. "I love you too," she whispered, surprising herself with the admission. "It terrifies me, but I love you too." Eugene pulled her up for a kiss that was soft and full of promise. As they settled back into each other's arms, both felt the dangerous hope that maybe, despite all the complications, they could find a way to make this work. Neither noticed the soft click of a camera from the building across the street, where Susan Wheeler's private investigator documented their intimate evening through the floor-to-ceiling windows. By morning, Susan would have detailed photographs of their lovemaking, time-stamp evidence of Rita spending the night, and all the ammunition she needed to destroy both their reputations. But for now, in the sanctuary of Eugene's bedroom, Rita and Eugene held each other close and dreamed of a future where love could conquer the obstacles, determined to tear them apart. unaware that their most dangerous enemy was already preparing to strike at the heart of their newfound happiness. Rita woke in Eugene's arms as dawn light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, momentarily disoriented by the luxury surrounding her. The events of the previous evening came rushing back. Their passionate confessions, the complete surrender to feelings they'd been fighting. The way Eugene had whispered, "I love you," against her skin like a prayer. She'd never experienced anything so tender yet intense, so physically satisfying yet emotionally transformative. Eugene stirred beside her, his arm tightening around her waist as consciousness returned. "Good morning, beautiful," he murmured against her hair, his voice rough with sleep and contentment. "Good morning," Rita replied softly, turning in his embrace to study his face in the morning light. The stress lines that usually creased his features had smoothed out, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked truly peaceful. "Any regrets?" Eugene asked, his eyes searching her expression for signs of doubt or retreat. Rita considered the question seriously. By every practical measure, she should be panicking about the implications of spending the night with him. Instead, she felt a bone-deep satisfaction and rightness that surprised her with its intensity. "None," she said honestly. "You?" Eugene's response was a kiss that conveyed relief, gratitude, and renewed desire. When they finally broke apart, Rita glanced at the clock on his nightstand and reality crashed back over her. "I have to go," she said reluctantly. "Lily will be home by 10, and I need to be there." Eugene nodded, though his arms remained around her. "When can I see you again?" "I don't know," Rita admitted, suddenly aware of how complicated their relationship would be in the harsh light of day. "We need to be careful, Eugene. After last night, everything feels different, more intense, and more dangerous." Over the following week, Rita and Eugene began navigating their secret relationship with the caution of people who understood the stakes. Eugene found excuses to visit St. Mary's Hospital more frequently, consulting on equipment upgrades, attending administrative meetings, touring facilities. Rita learned to anticipate his visits, the electric awareness that preceded his arrival, the way her pulse quickened when she heard his voice in the hallway. Their stolen moments became precious and charged with barely contained passion. In empty supply closets, Eugene would pull Rita close for desperate kisses that left them both breathless. During his official meetings, their eyes would meet across conference rooms, conveying volumes of longing and affection that no one else could interpret. Rita's apartment became their secret refuge. When Lily was at friends' houses or school activities, Eugene would arrive at Rita's modest building using the service entrance, bringing dinner from local restaurants or simply holding her while she talked about her day. He marveled at the warmth she'd created in such a small space. Family photos, Lily's artwork, books in both English and Spanish that reflected their Caribbean heritage. "I love this place," Eugene said one evening as they cuddled on Rita's worn couch, her head on his shoulder as they watched the sunset through her single window. "It feels like a real home." "It's not much compared to your penthouse," Rita replied, suddenly self-conscious about the obvious differences in their living situations. Eugene tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. "Rita, this is the first place I've felt truly welcome in years. Your penthouse is impressive, but this is where you and Lily built your life together. That makes it more valuable than any luxury." Rita felt tears prick her eyes at the sincerity in his voice. "I want Lily to meet you properly, not as the businessman who helped in a crisis, but as the man who's completely in love with her mother," Eugene finished softly. The opportunity came sooner than expected, when Lily came home early from a canceled study session to find Eugene and Rita sharing takeout dinner at their small kitchen table. Rita's heart stopped as her daughter walked through the front door, taking in the intimate domestic scene with teenage perceptiveness. "Mr. Fox?" Lily said with surprised recognition. "This is unexpected." "Lily," Rita began nervously, but Eugene stood with calm confidence. "Hello, Lily. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I brought enough dinner for 3 if you'd like to join us." Lily looked between a flustered mother and the composed billionaire, who was obviously more than just a family friend. "Are you dating my mother?" Eugene glanced at Rita, allowing her to take the lead in explaining their relationship to her daughter. Rita took a deep breath, realizing this moment would set the tone for how they move forward as a family unit. "Yes," Rita said simply. "Eugene and I have been seeing each other." Lily studied Eugene with the frank assessment only teenagers could manage. "Are you serious about her, or is this some rich guy fantasy about slumming it with the help?" "Lily," Rita gasped, mortified by her daughter's bluntness. But Eugene smiled, apparently impressed by Lily's protective instincts. "Your mother means everything to me," he said with quiet sincerity. "I'm not slumming, and she's not help. She's the most remarkable woman I've ever met, and I consider myself incredibly fortunate that she's willing to give me a chance." Lily's expression softened slightly at the obvious love in Eugene's voice. "Good answer, but if you hurt her, I know where you live." Eugene laughed, a genuine sound of delight. "I would expect nothing less from Rita's daughter. You're both incredible women who deserve to be protected and cherished." The evening that followed was a revelation for all three of them. Lily interrogated Eugene with teenage directness about his intentions, his company, and his understanding of their family dynamics. Eugene answered every question with patience and honesty, clearly recognizing that winning Lily's approval was crucial to any future with Rita. When Lily excused herself to finish homework, she hugged Eugene goodbye with surprising warmth. "Thank you for making my mama smile again," she whispered. "I haven't seen her this happy in a long time." After Lily went to her room, Rita and Eugene sat close together on the couch, both moved by the evening's success. "She likes you," Rita observed with wonder. "She loves you," Eugene replied, "and she's smart enough to recognize that I do too." Their relationship deepened over the following weeks as they carefully integrated their lives. Eugene met Rita's small circle of close friends, other immigrant healthcare workers who formed her chosen family. Rita attended a private dinner at Eugene's penthouse, meeting his younger brother Ruben, who managed European operations for Fox Medical Technologies. Ruben Fox proved to be warmer and more approachable than Eugene, with an easy smile and genuine interest in Rita's work and background. Over dinner, he shared stories about Eugene's transformation since meeting her. "He's been different," Ruben confided while Eugene was taking an important call. "More relaxed, more focused on meaningful work instead of just profits. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." But their careful courtship couldn't remain secret forever. Hospital gossip began circulating about Rita's frequent private conversations with major donor Eugene Fox. Colleagues noticed her improved mood, her new clothes, the way she carried herself with increased confidence. Dr. Parker, Rita's supervisor and mentor, called her into a private meeting one afternoon after Eugene's latest hospital visit. "Rita, I need to ask you something directly," Dr. Parker said, her expression serious. "Are you personally involved with Eugene Fox?" Rita felt her stomach drop, but she met her supervisor's eyes with honesty. "Yes, we're seeing each other." Dr. Parker was quiet for a long moment. "Rita, you're one of our best nurse assistants, and I've been supporting your advancement toward your RN degree. But I have to warn you, dating a major hospital donor puts you in a potentially compromising position professionally." "I understand the appearance of impropriety," Rita said carefully, "but our relationship developed naturally, and I would never allow it to affect my professional judgment or patient care." "I believe you," Dr. Parker said, "but appearances matter in healthcare. I'm not telling you to end your personal relationship, but I am advising extreme discretion. And Rita, be careful. Men with Eugene Fox's wealth and power often have complicated motivations." That evening, Rita shared her conversation with Dr. Parker with Eugene as they walked through a quiet park near her neighborhood. Eugene listened with growing concern, realizing that their relationship was beginning to affect Rita's professional standing. "Maybe we should be more discreet," Rita suggested, though the words felt like swallowing glass. "Take a step back until the hospital situation stabilizes." Eugene stopped walking, turning to face her with fierce intensity. "Rita, I won't let other people's prejudices dictate our relationship. If discretion means protecting your career, I understand. But if it means stepping back from what we've built together, I can't do that. Eugene, be realistic. Your world has rules, expectations, social hierarchies that I don't understand and can't navigate. Tonight, you probably have some business dinner or charity event with people who would be horrified to learn you're dating a nurse assistant from Barbados. Eugene was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone. Actually, I'm supposed to attend my mother's dinner party tonight. Susan Wheeler will be there, along with various family friends and business associates. He typed quickly, then showed Rita his screen. Canceled due to personal commitment. Rita's eyes widened. Eugene, you can't skip family obligations because of me. I can and I will, Eugene said firmly. Rita, I meant what I said about loving you. That means you come first, before social expectations or family pressure or business networking. Rita felt her heart swell with emotion at his fierce loyalty, but she also felt the weight of what his choice meant. Your mother is going to hate me even more. My mother will learn to love you once she gets to know you, Eugene said with more confidence than he felt, and if she doesn't, that's her loss. As they continued their walk, neither noticed the photographer with the telephoto lens capturing their intimate conversation from across the park. By morning, Susan Wheeler would have detailed photographs of their romantic evening, additional evidence to support the narrative she was carefully constructing. Susan had spent weeks building her case against Rita, gathering information about her immigration history, her financial struggles, and most importantly, her arrest record from a healthcare workers' rights protest 3 years earlier. The arrest had been dismissed, but the documentation would be perfect for suggesting Rita had a pattern of targeting wealthy men for financial gain. But Susan's most devastating weapon was still being developed. She'd discovered that Rita's student visa had expired briefly during Lily's medical emergency 2 years ago, creating a technical violation that could be used to question her immigration status. Combined with photographs of her obvious relationship with Eugene, Susan could paint a picture of a desperate immigrant using romance to secure her citizenship and financial future. As Eugene walked Rita home, stopping for tender kisses under streetlights and making plans for the weekend, Susan Wheeler finalized her strategy. Tomorrow, she would begin implementing a campaign designed to destroy Rita's reputation, end her relationship with Eugene, and reclaim the man she considered her rightful prize. The attack would come from multiple directions simultaneously. Anonymous tips to immigration authorities, strategic leaks to hospital administration, and carefully orchestrated social pressure from Eugene's family and business associates. By the time Eugene realized what was happening, Rita would be fighting for her career, her immigration status, and her ability to remain in the country with her daughter. Susan smiled coldly as she reviewed the photographs and documents spread across her dining room table. Eugene had always been too trusting, too idealistic about human nature. He was about to learn that some people would destroy anything beautiful rather than allow others to possess what they couldn't have. But what Susan didn't anticipate was the depth of Eugene's love for Rita, or the lengths he would go to protect the woman who had become his entire world. The battle for their relationship was about to begin, and both sides were prepared to fight with everything they had. The attack began on a Tuesday morning when Rita arrived at St. Mary's Hospital to find 2 immigration officers waiting in Dr. Parker's office. Rita's blood turned to ice as she saw the official badges and stern expressions, her mind immediately jumping to her worst fears about deportation and separation from Lily. Miss Wilson, the lead officer said, consulting his paperwork, we need to discuss some irregularities in your immigration status that have been brought to our attention. Rita's hands trembled as she sat across from the officers, Dr. Parker's sympathetic presence providing little comfort. The accusations were technically accurate, but presented in the worst possible light. Her briefly expired student visa during Lily's medical crisis, her current relationship with a wealthy American citizen, and implications that she was using romance to secure permanent residency. These allegations suggest a pattern of immigration fraud, the officer continued. We have photographic evidence of your relationship with Eugene Fox, documentation of expensive gifts and lifestyle changes that appear inconsistent with your reported income. Rita felt the room spinning as she realized someone had been systematically building a case against her. Officer, my relationship with Mr. Fox is genuine. I've never asked him for money or gifts, and I've maintained my legal status throughout, except for the period when your student visa lapsed. the officer interrupted. Our records show a 3-week gap that was never properly reported. Dr. Parker intervened. That was during a family medical emergency. Miss Wilson was caring for her critically ill daughter while maintaining her studies and work responsibilities. Any oversight was unintentional, but Rita could see the damage was already done. The officers informed her that pending the full investigation, her employment authorization was under review and her application for permanent residency had been flagged. She could continue working temporarily, but any further irregularities would result in immediate deportation proceedings. As the immigration officers left, Rita sat in stunned silence, her career and future in America hanging by a thread. Dr. Parker closed the office door, her expression grim. "Rita, I have to ask, is there any truth to these allegations about using your relationship for immigration benefits?" "None," Rita said firmly, though her voice shook with emotion. "My feelings for Eugene are completely genuine. I've never asked him for anything related to my immigration status." "I believe you," Dr. Parker said. "But Rita, someone with detailed knowledge of your background and current situation orchestrated this complaint. Do you have any idea who might want to damage your reputation?" Rita's mind immediately went to Susan Wheeler, but she had no proof beyond suspicious timing and hostile interactions. "I think Eugene's ex-fiancé might be involved, but I can't prove anything." As word of the immigration investigation spread through the hospital, Rita felt the weight of suspicious glances and whispered conversations. Colleagues who had welcomed her warmly now maintained careful distance. Afraid of being associated with potential scandal, her confidence eroded with each questioning look, each careful avoidance of personal topics. Eugene was in back-to-back board meetings about the ongoing ventilator crisis when his assistant handed him an urgent message. Rita called, "Emergency. Please call immediately." Eugene stepped out of the meeting, his heart racing as he dialed Rita's number. When she answered, her voice was thick with tears and barely controlled panic. "Eugene, I need to see you. Something terrible has happened." "I'm on my way," Eugene said without hesitation, already grabbing his coat and leaving his corporate crisis to handle itself. They met at a small coffee shop near the hospital, far from both their usual locations. Rita looked devastated, her usual composure shattered as she explained the immigration investigation and its implications. Eugene listened with growing fury, his jaw clenching as he realized the calculated cruelty of the attack on the woman he loved. "Rita, this is Susan's work," Eugene said grimly. "She has connections in immigration law through her firm, and the timing is too convenient to be coincidental." "Can you prove that?" Rita asked desperately. Eugene was quiet for a moment, his mind racing through possibilities. "Maybe, but even if I can, the damage to your reputation and immigration status might already be done." Rita felt tears spill down her cheeks as the full implications hit her. "Eugene, if I'm deported, Lily will have to come with me. She'll lose her opportunities here, her education, her entire future. I can't let that happen." Eugene reached across the table to take her hands, his heart breaking at the pain in her voice. "Rita, we'll fight this. I'll hire the best immigration lawyers, provide character references, document our genuine relationship." "No," Rita interrupted, pulling her hands away. "Eugene, don't you see? This is exactly what they want to happen. They want you to have to rescue me, to prove their point that I'm using you for security and money." "I don't care what they think," Eugene said fiercely. "Rita, I love you. I'm not going to stand by and watch someone destroy your life out of jealousy and spite." "But what if fighting makes it worse?" Rita asked, her voice breaking. "What if your involvement convinces the immigration authorities that the relationship really is fraudulent? What if I lose everything anyway, but drag you down with me?" Eugene felt desperation claw at his chest as he saw Rita retreating emotionally, protecting herself and her daughter by pulling away from him. "Rita, please don't shut me out. We can get through this together." "Can we?" Rita asked, meeting his eyes with heartbreaking uncertainty. "Eugene, your company is already in crisis. Your family disapproves of our relationship. Now dating me could be seen as interfering with a federal immigration investigation. How much damage are you willing to accept for someone you've known for a few months?" The question hung between them like a challenge, testing the depth of Eugene's commitment against the reality of their circumstances. Eugene felt everything inside him rebel against the implication that his love for Rita was somehow conditional or temporary. "Rita," he said with quiet intensity, "I would give up everything, my company, my family's approval, my social standing, rather than lose you. The only thing that matters to me is your happiness and safety." Rita felt her heart break at the sincerity in his voice, but she also felt the crushing weight of responsibility for everyone she loved. "That's not fair to either of us. You shouldn't have to choose between love and everything else that matters to you." Eugene started to protest, but Rita's phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Mama, kids at school are asking weird questions about immigration stuff. Are we in trouble?" Rita's face went pale as she read the message. "It's getting to Lily," she whispered. "Eugene, they're destroying my daughter's sense of security. I can't let this continue." "Rita, what are you saying?" Rita looked at him, with tears streaming down her face, her decision written in the devastation of her expression. "I'm saying maybe we need to take a break, until this investigation is resolved, until the scandal dies down. Maybe if there's no relationship to investigate, the accusations will lose their power." Eugene felt his world tilt as he understood what Rita was suggesting. "Rita, no. Don't let them win by destroying what we've built." "I'm not letting them win," Rita said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I'm protecting my daughter and your future. Sometimes love means making sacrifices. Sometimes love means fighting for what matters," Eugene countered desperately. "Rita, if you walk away now, Susan wins everything. She destroys our relationship and faces no consequences for her manipulation." Rita stood from the table, her movements careful and deliberate as she tried to hold herself together. "Eugene, I need time to think. I need to figure out how to protect Lily and salvage what's left of my career. I can't do that while worrying about how our relationship affects the investigation." Eugene rose as well, reaching for her hand one last time. "Rita, please, don't make this decision while you're scared and hurt. Let me help you fight this." Rita allowed him to take her hand, memorizing the warmth of his touch. "I love you," she whispered. "That's why I have to go." She kissed him softly, a goodbye that tasted of tears and broken dreams, then walked away before Eugene could stop her. Eugene stood alone in the coffee shop, watching the woman he loved disappear from his life, just as Susan Wheeler had planned. But as the initial shock wore off, it was replaced by something harder and more dangerous, a determination to expose Susan's schemes and protect Rita, even if she wouldn't let him fight beside her. What Eugene didn't know was that Susan had prepared for this possibility. As Rita tried to distance herself from him, Susan's next phase was already in motion. Anonymous tips had been sent to the hospital board questioning Rita's professional ethics, suggesting she'd been selling confidential patient information to her wealthy boyfriend. The accusations were completely false, but they would require investigation, potentially costing Rita her job and any chance of completing her nursing degree. Susan Wheeler smiled coldly as she watched the news reports about Fox Medical Technologies' declining stock prices and Eugene's increasingly erratic behavior at board meetings. Soon, she would swoop in as the solution to both his personal and professional crises. Eugene would be grateful for her support, and Rita would be nothing but a painful memory of his brief lapse in judgment. But Susan had underestimated both Eugene's resourcefulness and the depth of his love for Rita. Even as Rita tried to protect them both by staying away, Eugene was already putting pieces together, following money trails and legal connections that would lead directly back to Susan's door. The war for Rita's future was just beginning, and Eugene Fox was about to remind everyone why he'd built a billion-dollar empire, because when he wanted something badly enough, he would move heaven and earth to get it. Eugene spent 3 sleepless days systematically investigating Susan Wheeler's connections to Rita's immigration crisis. What he discovered made his blood run cold with fury and his heart race with the possibility of salvation. Susan's law firm had indeed filed the anonymous complaint, using doctored photographs and selectively edited surveillance footage to build their case. More damning Her private investigator had illegally accessed Rita's medical records during Lily's hospitalization to find ammunition for their attack. Working with his own team of investigators and legal experts, Eugene began building an airtight case against Susan's conspiracy. But every hour that passed felt like an eternity, while Rita suffered under the weight of false accusations and professional scrutiny. Rita, meanwhile, was drowning in the consequences of Susan's carefully orchestrated campaign. The hospital board had suspended her pending investigation into the fabricated ethics violations. Without her income and facing potential deportation, Rita was forced to consider the unthinkable, returning to Barbados with Lily before they were forcibly removed. "Mama, you're scaring me," Lily said one evening as they sat in their small living room, surrounded by partially packed boxes. "Why are we giving up? Why aren't we fighting this?" Rita looked at her brave, intelligent daughter and felt her heart shatter. "Baby girl, sometimes fighting makes things worse. Sometimes the best way to protect the people you love is to make hard choices." "Is this about Eugene?" Lily asked with teenage directness. "Because if you love him and he loves you, why are you letting other people destroy that?" Before Rita could answer, there was a firm knock at their apartment door. Rita's pulse jumped, fearing it might be immigration officers with deportation papers. Instead, she found Reuben Fox standing in her hallway, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced by grim determination. "Miss Wilson, I need to speak with you urgently," Reuben said. "It's about my brother and the case against you." Rita reluctantly let him in, introducing him to Lily, who studied Eugene's younger brother with curious intelligence. "Eugene sent you," Rita said, not making it a question. "No," Reuben replied. "Eugene doesn't know I'm here. He's been working around the clock to prove your innocence, but I have information he doesn't have access to." Reuben explained that his position managing European operations had given him insight into Susan Wheeler's international business dealings, including several instances of using immigration law to remove romantic rivals from her clients' lives. "She's done this before," Reuben said grimly. "3 times in the past 5 years, she's used false immigration complaints to destroy relationships that threatened her interests. We have the documentation to prove it." Rita felt hope flicker to life in her chest for the first time in days. "Can this evidence clear my name?" "It can do more than that," Reuben said. "It can destroy her career and result in criminal charges for fraud and conspiracy. But Rita, Eugene needs you to trust him enough to let him fight for you. He's brilliant at corporate warfare, but he's falling apart without you." Lily spoke up before Rita could respond. "Mama, Mr. Eugene's brother is right. You've been crying every night since you stopped seeing him. If he has a way to fix this, why won't you let him try?" Rita felt tears spring to her eyes at her daughter's wisdom. "Because I'm afraid of hoping too much. What if we fight and lose everything anyway?" "What if you don't fight and lose everything for certain?" Reuben countered gently. "Rita, my brother has never loved anyone the way he loves you. He would rather lose his company than lose you. Don't you think your love is worth fighting for?" That evening, Rita made the hardest phone call of her life, dialing Eugene's number with trembling fingers. He answered on the first ring, his voice rough with exhaustion and desperate hope. "Rita?" "Eugene," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Reuben came to see me. He told me about the evidence you found." "Rita, thank God," Eugene breathed. "I've been going insane without you. We can prove Susan orchestrated everything, the immigration complaint, the hospital allegations, all of it. But I need you to trust me." "I do trust you," Rita said, surprising herself at the certainty in her voice. "Eugene, I'm sorry I tried to protect us by pushing you away. I was scared, and—" "Don't apologize," Eugene interrupted. "You were protecting your daughter and trying to shield me from consequences. But Rita, I need you to understand something. You and Lily are my family now. I will fight for my family with everything I have." Rita felt tears streaming down her face at the fierce love in his voice. "What do you need me to do?" "Meet me tomorrow morning at the federal building. We're filing criminal charges against Susan Wheeler, and your testimony will be crucial to stopping her from doing this to anyone else." The next morning, Rita stood beside Eugene in the marble lobby of the federal building, surrounded by his legal team and mountains of evidence documenting Susan's conspiracy. For the first time in weeks, Rita felt like herself again, strong, capable, and worthy of the love blazing in Eugene's intense gaze. The federal prosecutor, Maria Santos, reviewed their evidence carefully. "We have enough for charges," she told them. "But Susan's legal connections mean some evidence might be suppressed. Your case will be resolved, Miss Wilson, but the full scope of her conspiracy may never be completely exposed." Miss Wheeler's pattern of using immigration law as a weapon against romantic rivals shows clear criminal intent. As they prepared to file charges, Eugene pulled Rita aside for a private moment. "Rita, I have something else to tell you," he said, his voice nervous in a way she'd rarely heard. "I've been working with immigration attorneys, and we can not only clear your name, but expedite your permanent residency application. But more than that." Eugene dropped to one knee in the federal building hallway, pulling out a ring box that made Rita's breath catch. "Rita Wilson, I don't want to wait for our lives to be perfect to ask you this. I love you completely, and I want to build a future with you and Lily that no one can ever threaten again. Will you marry me?" Rita stared down at the man she loved, offering her not just his heart, but his protection, his name, and his unwavering commitment. "Eugene, are you sure? After everything we've been through." "Because of everything we've been through," Eugene corrected. "Rita, you've seen me at my worst and loved me anyway. You've sacrificed your own happiness to protect the people you love. You're the strongest, most compassionate person I know, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you." "Yes," Rita whispered, then louder, "Yes, I'll marry you." As Eugene slipped the ring onto her finger, Rita felt the final pieces of her broken heart healing. But their celebration was interrupted by Agent Rodriguez approaching with urgent news. "We have a problem," Agent Rodriguez said grimly. "Susan Wheeler has been tipped off about the investigation. She's attempting to flee the country, and she's taken several pieces of evidence with her that could implicate other victims." Eugene felt ice run through his veins. If Susan escaped, she could continue destroying lives from abroad, and Rita's case might be left unresolved. "Where is she now?" Eugene asked. "Private airfield across town. She has a flight scheduled to leave for a non-extradition country in 2 hours." Rita gripped Eugene's hand tightly. "What does this mean for us?" Agent Rodriguez looked grim. "If she escapes with that evidence, proving the full scope of her conspiracy becomes much more difficult. Your case will likely still be resolved, but others might never get justice." Eugene felt something fierce and protective rise in his chest. Susan had tried to destroy the woman he loved, terrorized immigrants who were already vulnerable, and corrupted the legal system for her own gain. He couldn't let her escape consequences for her crimes. "Agent Rodriguez," Eugene said with quiet determination, "what would you need to stop her?" "Honestly, someone with the resources and connections to delay her departure long enough for us to get there with arrest warrants." Eugene was already pulling out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. "Rita, I need you to trust me one more time. I'm going to make some calls, use some influence to ground her plane, but it might create publicity we haven't planned for." Rita looked into his steel-gray eyes and saw the same protective fury that had drawn her to him from their first meeting. "Do whatever you need to do. Stop her." As Eugene worked his contacts in aviation and law enforcement, Rita realized she was witnessing the full power of the man she'd fallen in love with. Not his wealth or social status, but his unwavering commitment to justice and protecting the people he loved. Within an hour, Susan Wheeler was in federal custody, her escape attempt thwarted by Eugene's connections and Agent Rodriguez's swift action. As they watched her being led away in handcuffs, Rita felt a satisfaction deeper than revenge, the knowledge that Susan would face consequences for her actions and couldn't hurt anyone else. But their victory was interrupted by Eugene's phone, ringing with a call that made his face go pale. "What is it?" Rita asked, alarmed by his expression. Eugene hung up, his voice tight with new concern. "That was my mother. She's called an emergency board meeting for Fox Medical Technologies. She claims she has evidence that I've been using company resources for personal vendettas, and she's moving to have me removed as CEO." Rita felt her heart sink as she realized their victory over Susan had opened a new front in their battle for their future together. The emergency board meeting at Fox Medical Technologies was a battlefield disguised as corporate governance. Mrs. Teresa Fox sat at the head of the polished conference table, flanked by longtime board members who owed their positions to the Fox family legacy. Eugene entered with Rita beside him, their united front a silent declaration that their personal and professional lives were now inseparably intertwined. Eugene, Mrs. Fox began with icy formality. This board has serious concerns about your recent behavior and judgment. Using company resources to investigate personal matters, neglecting the ventilator crisis for romantic pursuits, and now involving Fox Medical Technologies in federal criminal proceedings. Eugene remained calm, his hand finding Rita's under the table. Mother, everything I've done has been to protect innocent people from a criminal conspiracy. Susan Wheeler used her law firm's resources to file false federal complaints. Exposing her crimes serves the public interest. At what cost? Demanded board member Harrison, one of Mrs. Fox's longtime allies. Company stock has dropped 15% since news broke about your involvement in this immigration scandal. Shareholders are questioning your fitness to lead. Rita felt Eugene's tension as the board members attacked not just his leadership but their relationship. She squeezed his hand, drawing strength from their connection while watching the man she loved defend both their future and his life's work. The cost of doing nothing would have been much higher, Eugene replied steadily. Susan Wheeler was systematically destroying innocent lives. Rita Wilson nearly lost her career, her immigration status, and her ability to remain in this country with her daughter because of Wheeler's criminal conspiracy. Rita Wilson, Mrs. Fox said, turning her cold gaze to Rita for the first time. The woman you've known for barely 2 months, yet you're willing to risk everything for her. Rita felt the weight of judgment in the room, but also felt Eugene's unwavering support beside her. Mrs. Fox, Rita said with quiet dignity, I never asked Eugene to risk anything for me. I actually tried to end our relationship to protect him from exactly this kind of scrutiny. How convenient, Mrs. Fox replied coldly. And yet here you are, engaged to my son after a whirlwind romance that coincidentally resolves all your immigration problems. Eugene's jaw clenched dangerously. Mother, that's enough. Rita has more integrity and strength than anyone in this room. She's made my life better in every possible way, and I won't tolerate your disrespect. But Reuben Fox had been quietly working on his laptop during the heated exchange. Suddenly, he stood up, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced by steel. Reuben Fox had been quietly investigating unusual financial patterns in Fox Medical Technologies' overseas accounts for months. As Eugene's brother and head of European operations, he'd noticed irregularities that didn't align with normal business practices. But it wasn't until Rita's crisis that he realized these seemingly random anomalies might be connected to deliberate sabotage. Actually, Mother, there's something everyone needs to see, Reuben announced, connecting his laptop to the conference room display. I've been conducting my own investigation into the company's recent problems. The screen filled with financial records, email chains, and documented evidence that made several board members shift uncomfortably in their seats. The defective ventilator crisis that's been threatening our company, Reuben continued. It wasn't caused by manufacturing errors. It was sabotage from within our own organization, orchestrated by someone with access to our quality control systems. Mrs. Fox's face went pale. Reuben, what are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, Mother. I'm proving it. Reuben clicked to the next screen, showing email communications between Susan Wheeler and board member Harrison. Susan Wheeler has been feeding inside information to our competitors, while simultaneously undermining Eugene's leadership. She promised certain board members lucrative consulting positions with rival companies in exchange for their support in removing Eugene as CEO. The room erupted in shocked voices and denials, but Reuben wasn't finished. More significantly, board member Harrison has been selling proprietary Fox Medical Technologies designs to overseas manufacturers, directly contributing to the defective equipment that's caused patient deaths. Eugene stared at his younger brother with amazement and gratitude. Reuben, how did you? I've been tracking unusual financial patterns in our overseas accounts for months, Reuben explained. When Susan's conspiracy against Rita started, I realized the connections weren't coincidental. "Mother, you've been manipulated by people who wanted to destroy our family business from within." Mrs. Fox looked around the table at board members she'd trusted for decades, seeing guilt and panic in several faces. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. Her own allies had been working to destroy everything her late husband had built. Furthermore, Reuben continued, pulling out additional documents. Eugene's relationship with Rita has actually improved company performance. Since they began dating, Eugene has focused more on patient outcomes and medical innovation rather than just profit margins. Our research and development has produced 3 breakthrough respiratory technologies that could revolutionize patient care. Rita watched in amazement as Eugene's brother systematically dismantled the case against them while exposing genuine corruption within the company. But she also saw the pain in Mrs. Fox's eyes as the extent of the betrayal became clear. "Mrs. Fox," Rita said gently, "I know you're concerned about your son's judgment, but I want you to know that Eugene's loyalty to his family and his company has never wavered. Even when our relationship was causing him problems, he never stopped working to protect Fox Medical Technologies." Mrs. Fox studied Rita with new attention, perhaps seeing past her own prejudices for the first time. "Miss Wilson, why didn't you accept my offer to leave Eugene's life? The money would have solved your financial problems without the complications of this relationship." Rita met her eyes with quiet dignity. "Because I love your son, not his money. And because teaching my daughter that love has a price would have been a betrayal of everything I want her to believe about relationships and self-worth." For the first time since Rita had known her, Mrs. Fox's expression softened slightly. "You turned down financial security for principle." "I turned down money to protect something more valuable," Rita corrected. "Your son's trust, my daughter's respect, and my own integrity." Eugene felt his heart swell with love and pride as he watched Rita handle his mother's interrogation with grace and strength. "Mother, Rita has made me a better man and a better leader. Our relationship isn't a distraction from my responsibilities. It's what gives my responsibilities meaning." The board meeting concluded with several resignations, criminal referrals, and a unanimous vote of confidence in Eugene's leadership. But the real transformation occurred when Mrs. Fox approached Rita privately as the room cleared. "Miss Wilson," Mrs. Fox said formally, "I've spent weeks researching your background, expecting to find evidence of opportunism. Instead, I discovered a woman who's consistently chosen integrity over advantage, even when it cost her dearly. My prejudices blinded me to your character, and I owe you an apology." Rita extended her hand in peace. "Mrs. Fox, I understand your concerns. Eugene is an extraordinary man, and you want to protect him. I want the same thing." Mrs. Fox studied Rita's extended hand, then surprised everyone by pulling her into an embrace. "Welcome to the family, Rita. And please, call me Theresa." 6 months later, Rita and Eugene's wedding took place in the community garden behind the Rita Wilson Foundation headquarters. A medical clinic and immigration assistance center they'd established together in Rita's neighborhood. The ceremony was attended by an unusual mix of billionaire executives and Caribbean immigrants, hospital workers and board members, creating the kind of authentic community both Rita and Eugene had always dreamed of. Lily served as maid of honor, radiant in her role as the bridge between her mother's old life and their family's new beginning. During the ceremony, she read a poem she'd written about courage, love, and the family you choose rather than the one you're born into. "Rita," Eugene said in his vows, his voice carrying across the garden filled with people from every part of their lives, "you saw something in me I'd forgotten was there. You taught me the difference between having everything and having what matters and the lives we touch together. You made me want to be worthy of the way you look at me." Rita's response brought tears to every eye in the garden. "Eugene, you showed me that love isn't about being rescued. It's about being seen for who you really are, being valued, and being brave enough to build something beautiful together, no matter what obstacles we face." As they kissed as husband and wife, surrounded by family and friends who represented their merged worlds, Rita felt the completion of a journey that had begun with stumbling into the wrong helicopter and finding exactly the right man. The reception continued late into the evening, with steel drum music mixing with classical strings, Caribbean cuisine alongside elegant canapes, and conversations in multiple languages, creating a celebration as diverse and beautiful as their love story. What would you do if someone offered you money to walk away from the love of your life? Have you ever experienced a moment when a complete stranger changed the entire direction of your life? Sometimes our greatest love stories begin with the most unexpected encounters, whether it's romantic love, friendship, or just a moment of human kindness that shifted everything. Share your story of unexpected connection in the comments below. If Rita and Eugene's journey touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Sage King Stories for more passionate tales of love conquering all obstacles. Ring the notification bell so you never miss a story about the power of authentic connection and the courage to choose love over fear. Tomorrow, we'll share another story of unexpected love, this time about a brilliant surgeon whose world changes when she discovers her biggest professional rival is hiding a secret that could heal them both. You won't want to miss it. Remember, the most beautiful love stories often begin when we're not looking for them, when we're simply being our truest selves, and someone recognizes the treasure we've always been. Rita stumbled into the wrong helicopter that night, but sometimes getting lost is exactly how we find our way home. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Rita and Eugene stood together on the foundation's balcony, looking out over the neighborhood where they'd first fallen in love. Willie had fallen asleep on a couch inside, exhausted from dancing and celebration, while Teresa Fox sat nearby reading a medical journal, already planning her next donation to their foundation. "Any regrets?" Eugene asked, echoing the question he'd posed on their first morning together. Rita smiled, her wedding ring catching the light as she reached up to touch his face. "Only that we waited so long to trust what we felt from that very first moment." Eugene pulled her closer, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms, how right their life together felt. "Rita Fox," he said, testing her new name. "I like the sound of that." "I love the sound of that," Rita corrected, then kissed her husband under the stars, knowing that their love story was just beginning, and that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger for having chosen each other against all odds. In the distance, the lights of St. Mary's Hospital glowed like a beacon, where their love story had first taken root in sterile hallways and stolen moments. But now they had built something lasting and beautiful, a foundation that would help others find their own paths to love, security, and belonging in a world that often tried to keep people apart. Their helicopter might have been the wrong one that desperate night, but it had carried them both exactly where they belonged, home, in each other's arms, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring, with the unshakable knowledge that love, when it's real and true and worth fighting for, can indeed conquer all.